how does Indiana grow in lacrosse, right? So you've been at all aspects, right? You've been a kid growing up here in Indy. You've coached college, you've coached high school, you've done it, you're running a youth program. What do we need to do as a community? What do we need to do as a community to grow the sport?
Yeah, I mean, if you're talking about let's inject steroids in Indiana and go, we got to get it state sanctioned.
Yeah.
That's the first thing. And I'll be frank, the growth of our sport is not there in the state yet.
Yeah.
You're telling me that Illinois, Ohio, and Michigan are all state sanctioned and they're doing incredible.
Yeah.
Not only incredible, they're producing high caliber athletes that go and play at the highest level. And so what you have to do is you need to get a certain percentage of your schools in your state to be playing the sport in order to be at state sanctioned.
Right.
So it's something like 30-something%, maybe more. So that means however many schools we have in Indiana, 400, 300 high schools, wherever it is, we need to get 30% of that.
Right.
So you're talking about 100-something plus schools.
Right.
We're at 60-something. We were at 40-something when I was playing.
Okay.
So you're telling me that 15 years has passed and we've
only
had about 4 schools a year. You're talking about another 10, 15, 20 years.
Before we really get to that point.
Before we even get close.
Yeah.
Now, what you can do is you could try to argue that it shouldn't be this percentage. It should be more, let's hit a mark of 80 schools. Let's hit a mark of 90 schools and then go from there.
Yeah.
Once again, it's got to be accessible.
Right.
It's got to be accessible. It's got to be affordable. When you're telling us that we have to spend $5,000 a year on transportation costs and buses and stuff like that, we got to buy our own jerseys. We got to buy our own. Now, your stick is your stick. You probably got to buy that. That's fine. But other things like that, we put an initiative out to buy helmets for all our kids at North Central.
Okay.
So we got helmets for all those kids. We got gear, like we said earlier. So we've done everything we can. The club cost, paying for refs, coaches, and then transportation costs, that's what really kills it. Because I probably had 30 or 40 kids come out to some of those clinics. But how many can stay with once you tell them there's a price tag of $350?
Right.
Not a lot can hang.
Right.
And so that's one thing that really hurts it, is that you don't have a lot of kids, especially in the inner city, that can afford it.
Yeah.
But are these kids more than capable of being varsity athletes? 100%.
Yeah, for sure.
100%. So getting the state to a point where we can become state sanctioned is a huge, huge part of it. And I mean, I've written letters. I've done a lot of things to try and push for this. And, you know, it's one of those things that is going to be an uphill battle for us.
Right. Oh, yeah, for sure.
But I think that the IHSAA needs to look at Illinois, Michigan, and Ohio and see what good it's done. You're talking about providing 40-plus kids at each school an opportunity to do something in the spring. Not only that, but, hey, go get yourself a scholarship with that.
Yeah, yeah.
Go do this, go do that. I mean, it really is it's a unique sport. It's tough to get into. Yeah. And that's the issue.
Yeah.
You just need to make it accessible. So really trying to get to a point where the IHSA understands what we're doing, but also understands that globally this is the fastest growing sport in the world.
Yeah.
Jump on. Get on the train.
Yeah.
Now, we're not going to stop. It's going to keep growing around Indiana. And if you really want to, we're going to be 20 years behind the curve.
Right, and we will be fighting an uphill battle. Even when we are a sanctioned sport, we will be competing against Illinois, Michigan, Kentucky. I mean, we'll be facing all of these other for those scholarships. So really, if we want our kids to have the best opportunities, right? So I mean, if you're looking even as an academic point of view, why don't we get those? Why don't we make it a varsity sport so that we aren't competing when all of these colleges are offering, right? You said, 1 in 10, 1 in 8 kids are getting scholarships to go play. Why aren't we doing this? Why aren't we providing this opportunity so that these kids have now that opportunity to get some money to go to college? Because the chances for them to do that are greater than any other sport.
Oh yeah.
And I mean, if you look at, I mean, if this is going to sound bad, but if you want your kids to succeed, if you want your kids to go to college, right? If you're a program that says we want as many Indiana athletes to get scholarships so that they can better their education through being student athletes, then why not add the sport that gives them the opportunity to have those opportunities?
100%. And there are schools here in town that are becoming school sanctioned.
Mm-hmm.
So that means they're booking the bill
Right.
for the transportation
Right.
costs
Yeah.
and the refs and stuff
Yeah.
like that.
Mm-hmm.
And I applaud those schools. That is 100% where it needs to be. If the state's not going to give it to us, let's put it on the schools to go ahead and
Yeah.
push for that. And
Yeah.
I know some schools that aren't doing that.
Yeah.
And once again, I don't know any athletic director who, if you told them, hey, we've got this sport here, this school, they're doing great, they're sending kids to go play, do you want to be on the same page and compete with them? Or do you want to, once again, be behind the ball 5 years, 10 years
Right,
down
and
the
be
road?
able to say, hey, look, we have these players. I mean, that was one of the big things that when we pushed for Taylor to be a varsity program,
Mm-hmm.
that we really struggled with, because Taylor has a very niche market of Christian athletics.
Yeah.
And in the Indiana area, there was a lot of athletes. I mean, you can talk about, if you want kids who wanted that faith-based student academic life, right, from Cathedral, from
Chatard,
you know, like Ron College, or all these other different,
Mm-hmm.
you know, Heritage Christian, all these Christian schools. Well, the nearest one that had like varsity lacrosse was like Asbury.
Right.
And so now we're getting kids out of state, or now we're sending our kids out of state. When we were trying to push Taylor, like, hey, we're an in-sport, we could have had, I mean, I remember the guys who started it saying, we could have had 30 years up on all these other schools, you know.
It's very possible.
And that's just more money that the school is would be bringing in.
Yeah.
And so, I mean, better late than never. Taylor's still, I would say, above the curve with a lot of any other NAIA sports, at least in like Taylor's conference. I mean, you look
Right.
at Marion, you look at those other schools. I mean, they are ahead of the curve on that. So I think that, to be completely honest, it is a no-brainer. But like you said, there's a huge financial toll. So
Yep.
how do you make lacrosse more financially
Attainable.
for schools to?
Yeah. You know, that's one of those big questions.
Yeah.
Right? Where do you get the funding? Where do you get this? Where do you get that? You know, the IHSAA has found ways to provide money for all the sports.
Yeah.
And I mean, I try to think of it as a way that if you want the overall growth of your athletics to continue in a positive direction, you need to start being willing to be open to new sports. Now, you have rugby, you have lacrosse, you have ultimate frisbee, you have all these club sports that kind of people brush off to a degree.
Yeah.
But dig deeper. Dig a little bit deeper. And I'm not going to knock on those club sports because I think they're great.
Yeah.
Rugby is such a huge international following.
Yeah.
Where's in the U.S., right?
Right.
But dig deeper. Look into lacrosse. Check the stats. You're going to find that not only is the exponential growth wild, but it's going in the best direction possible. And I think that's really where you'll find the truth, and that you'll know that everything is going to be definitely going in the right direction.
Yeah.